Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Ashley, and I am so excited for this episode today. I'm joined by a very special guest, Lai-DuMone. Vaughn is the founder and CEO of worksmart Advantage, helping organizations integrate curiosity and innovation into the workplace. She has designed and implemented learning development programs for companies like Google and LinkedIn, believing that curiosity is our most powerful asset and the key to unlocking new possibilities. And while I'll let her dive into how her mother helped pioneer what is now an over $8 billion industry, it all began with a moment of curiosity. She also is the author of What If Pigs Can Fly, a practical guide to follow your curiosities to achieve impractical possibilities. You may have seen her on the TEDx stage, but today I have the honor of introducing her on the Endurance Diary. So with that, Vaughn, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks for the introduction. I feel the podcast can be over now.
Yeah. No, there's a lot to get into here. I'm so excited that you're here and for this conversation. But before we get started, we've got to share the love and give a shout out to the amazing Nancy Gale for connecting us.
Yes, I heard her on your podcast, and I think it was just some comments on LinkedIn that we both made that we connected. Yes, Nancy is amazing.
Yes, she is, and so much love and appreciation. You know, I love seeing the interactions between you two and just admire the ways that you lift one another up. It's energizing and empowering. And I think just a reminder too that success isn't just a solo journey and we need each other. So it's really an honor to have the opportunity to share this space with you. And I think also really just embodies this concept of what if and the possibilities that exist when we do lean in with curiosity and see, you know, the potential in one another and those connections can happen. So I've got a lot of questions for you, but this podcast is all about our personal journeys and perseverance. So let's start with your family's journey from Vietnam to the US and how that experience intersected with your mother's role in transforming the Vietnamese manicure industry.
So I'm a Vietnamese refugee. My family came here when I was 2 years old at the fall of Saigon, April 29th, 1975. We fled Vietnam. And our first home here was at Camp Pendleton Marine Base in San Diego. And after about 2 or 3 months there, we were transferred to a refugee integration center up in Northern California in Sacramento. And it was called Hope Village. And it was the first civilian-run refugee center in the United States. So, you know, hundreds of volunteers came to help us in this transition, including a Hollywood movie star named Tippi Hedren. And Tippi had a very particular role at the camp. Her role was to help the women find a new career. So she started a typing and sewing class for them because those were careers that were fairly easy to learn and fairly easy to get into at the time. So she started this program. My mom and 19 other women signed up for the program. And I mean, she brought in everything, like the typewriters, the sewing machines, and they were in this classroom typing and sewing. And as Tippi would walk around the room encouraging them, they had a curiosity about something completely different. They were curious about her long red manicured nails. And it's such a powerful story because imagine being, you know, a Hollywood movie star. You've already set up this entire program for these women, and they say they like your nails. She could have easily just said, "Thank you so much. You know, keep typing, keep sewing," but she didn't. She paused and she paid attention to that curiosity. And because of that, they start asking questions like, what if? Like, how might we? What if we could become manicurists? How might we do that? And then that led them to a couple small steps. The first small step was Tippi coming back to Los Angeles and asking her local manicurist if she would come up and teach them how to do a basic manicure. And her manicurist's name was Dusty Kuz-Butera. So she came up weekend after weekend and helped my mom and her friends learn how to do a basic manicure. And it was fun. They liked it, all that stuff, but it didn't make them licensed manicurists. But because they took that small step, another small step opened up for them, right? They didn't know what was going to happen next, but the next small step was Tippi, despite any of these challenges, like the women didn't have money to pay tuition, and most of them didn't speak English. She went down to local beauty college with them and said, I have these 20 women. Here's their situation. Is there any way we can put them through your school to get them to be licensed manicurists. And the owners of Citrus Heights Beauty College at the time said yes. So after 10 weeks, 400 hours of schooling, my mom, her friends, they all passed their manicure practicum and their written test in English, and they became licensed manicurists. And the story continues from there, right? We all got sponsored to different areas in the United States. My family was sponsored by a church in Santa Monica, and Tippy lived down here. So she came over to our house and took my mom salon to salon until she found her a job. And the story continues after that because one of my mom's high school friends from Vietnam came over, saw what she was doing, and her husband got into the profession. They ended up starting their own beauty school in Orange County that's run now by their son and their daughter, Tam and Lynn Nguyen. And they have, I think at this point, they have probably licensed over 50,000 manicurists.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's like that is the beginning of what, like you said, there's now over an $8.3 billion industry. And I always say that $8.3 billion because it's like striking. But really what it is like, think of all the lives she changed. Look at all the lives that were changed by this curiosity.
100%. And even just, that's something too that, you go to these different salons and you get your nails done, all of that. And even just to have the curiosity to ask that question of, how did this all evolve? And then you go back and there's just this incredible story. And one thing I wanted to pull out from there is, and I know you talk about this in your book as well, but just the power of small steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was exposed to the work of Dr. Robert Maurer through his book called One Small Step Can Change Your Life, the Kaizen Way, several years ago. And it really did change my life because I was at a point in my life where I was in a career I didn't love. And I had just had my son, he was 8 weeks old. He was a little old at this point by the time I got to this book. But I had made this choice. I had an 8-week-old son. My brother had been in this terrible motorcycle accident that left him in a coma for 2 months. And as he was recovering, I was like, I want to do something different with my life. I want my son to see his mom do something she loves. And, my brother is fortunately fine now, 100% fine. But during that time, he was in this coma, like, life is so short. Like, what am I doing in a job I don't love? And I had this idea in my head for a business for 6 years as I was going through the motions of this job. But it just seemed like, well, how am I ever how am I going to get from this job to this business I want to start all the way over here? So for 6 years, I did nothing with it until I, came across Dr. Maurer's work. And he talks about the neuroscience of small steps, this idea that you can reach your goals quicker by just giving yourself these little small steps. And really the idea is like no step is too small and you're tricking your brain, right? Our brain, we have our part of our brain called the amygdala that's designed to stop us from doing things that might harm us. So the way I put it I think I read about it in my book, I definitely talked about it in my TEDx talk, is this idea that when we take small steps, we're tiptoeing around that bodyguard. We're tiptoeing around the amygdala so we don't wake it up. So we can take a ton of small steps, allowing us to reach our goals faster than trying this giant leap that we may fail at or that we may never even attempt because we're too scared to.
The question, what if, is at the heart of your book. And I want to talk about the possibilities that come from asking powerful questions. And oftentimes, with the what if questions, it carries the negative connotations and it leads us to focus on the fear or doubt, the worst case scenario. But you flip that question around and you encourage people to think about the endless possibilities instead. So how does that question open up the door to creativity and innovation?
So it's so true. Like when we think about like, oh my God, like what if this happens? What if that is like, if there's a negative connotation. So when I talk about what if, I lead with this concept, this creative problem solving principle of divergent thinking. So divergent thinking is this thinking principle where all ideas make it to the table. Like I don't care how wild and crazy the idea is. If you think it, you write it down somewhere, whether it's a Post-it note, in a notebook, whatever it is. If you have an idea, you just put it on a piece of paper because when you think in terms of divergent thinking, that's where the creativity is. Like all these big grand ideas can show up, and that's where the what if, right? Like, well, what, like for example, let's just say, I like one of my dreams right now is to move to a farm one day. I can't do it now. I'm an 11-year-old, 12-year-old kid. It's like there's things that are preventing me. But rather than saying no to myself and saying like, okay, that's crazy, I can't do it. When you use divergent thinking, you can come up with different ways that might be possible one day, or how can you make small steps to get there. So the what if question is really to use your imagination and use divergent thinking, come up with as many ideas as possible. No judgment of your ideas. All ideas matter. Wild and crazy ideas are welcome. And then you can get more practical with the second part of that, which is called convergent thinking. And in convergent thinking, now we're narrowing down, right? It's like, okay, great. I have all these amazing ideas. I'm going to buy 10 pigs, a donkey, and a horse, right? And some miniature cows. And then you go through convergent thinking, like, okay, well, here are the parameters I'm living in right now. So which of these divergent thinking and what if thoughts can I take a small step towards for now? So it's really a way to say yes to yourself, right? Even if it's a small way to say yes to your big idea, that's what we're using these like what if questions for.
I love to you shared this. You kind of bring divergent, convergent thinking to life in the way that, like, putting your arms up, right? Big thinking and then convergent thinking. They can't exist at the same time. However, after the divergent thinking, you can come into the convergent thinking and then take those steps forward towards something.
Absolutely. So and you can use that in like individually for yourself and within teams too. So for the idea, like you said, like first divergent thinking is this, right? Bringing as many ideas as possible. Convergent thinking is narrowing down to an idea you can move forward with, but you can't do both at the same time effectively, right? You have to diverge and allow all your ideas on the table first, and then you can converge. And that's how the best ideas make it to the finish line.
Yeah, for sure. And so I know you just mentioned the farm dream.
That's right. Have I said that before somewhere?
I've heard that before, and my follow-up question to that is, what is something else right now that you are curious about that you could take one step forward in?
Okay, so I have so many ideas. Like I'm an ideator. That's a little bit. I love it as a little bit of problem because there's so many things. So I think so. That's like a personal one is like the farm. I think I guess it would be another personal one is this idea of, and this may be getting a little interesting, but this idea of energy, like these levels of energy and how we can manifest things in our life if we are living at the energy of what we want. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, what if I think, I mean, it's similar to what we're already talking about. What if I can think impractically? What if I live in the energy of I already have that farm or, whatever it might be and see what I can manifest. And I'm telling you, this stuff works. Like this, like it's, and I love the fact that like, I think a little bit as like a woo woo, but the reality is it's science, right? We are all energy. So if you can elevate your energy to the level of what you're trying to attract, it just makes sense. Right? What if I lived in the energy of a farmer?
What does that feel like, Vaughn?
Yes, exactly.
What does it feel like to live in that?
Are you asking me, or are we just saying?
I'm just speaking out loud.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's right. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a farm. Like, what if everyone lives the energy of what you're looking for, and what you're trying to create versus the energy of your reality?
Yeah. I really wonder how that, kind of going back to some of the things you're talking about earlier, is just how that can influence your experience and just your everyday walk and perspective whenever you are living in that kind of energy, right? As if you're all becoming who, you already are.
Yeah, I think will impact the way not just your energy, but I think will impact the way you move in the world and the things you decide to do.
I'm curious on this because you had the book, and that was after you went on the TEDx stage and you had your TED Talk. And I would love to learn more about your experience with that, because for those who don't know, with TED Talks, you go up there and there's no teleprompter. That is a bit intimidating, right? And like to have that courage to go up there and to share, in a way, it's like it's vulnerable and you're there's a risk, right? It costs you something to go up there. So I'd love to learn more about your approach with that and what inspired you to go up there and do this talk, and how taking risks can actually help build your confidence.
So I'll tell you the whole story. So I use my framework. The framework I share in the book is pause and pay attention to your curiosities, ask what if, and then take small steps to get there. So I selfishly wanted to do a TEDx talk because I run a business. I thought it would be good visibility to get my face and name out there. And I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to talk about. I knew it was around creativity and curiosity, but I wasn't sure what it was. So I had gone with my mom to this Vietnamese manicure celebration. It was, I don't know, hundreds of people in this room celebrating my mom, Tippy and Dusty. And as I saw my mom on stage, I thought, this is my story. Like, who else can tell this story from my perspective? And it was that, I mean, again, this like, I think about like clarity too. So once I had that clarity, I just started seeing things. So what I saw was I was on LinkedIn one day and I saw a TEDx come across my feed, and it was called TEDx Women Mission of Mavericks. And it was in Anaheim, the same city where I just seen my mom celebrated. And they had all their speakers lined up. They were selling tickets for the audience. So, a little dejected, I bought a ticket and I walked away from my computer. But then I paused and paid attention to that little idea that kept tapping me on the shoulder. Like, what are you guys talking on that stage, Vine? What if? And so the next small step I took was to email the producers and say, this is my story. I think it would be really well received on your stage. And a little while later, I got an email saying, we would love for you to share your story on our stage. Right. So it's like, that's like, these are, and then the more, so I'm going to mix your two questions, because I feel like doing that has given me so much courage to continue to do that. And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is yes. And you get to the point where you don't really care what the answer is going to be, right? You just make these moves and just take these risks. And it literally is like a muscle you have to build. So the process of the TEDx talk was interesting because I had never clearly had written a TEDx talk before, been part of one. And every single TEDx is different because it's produced by someone local. So it just depends, right? I've heard of some where it's a very strict application process, audition process, and they give you a writing coach, a speaking coach, and you just go through everything. This one was not that. This was like, sure, you can speak. Well, send in a couple things. We'll see you in Anaheim. And so it was well done, but very loose. So the first thing I did is I wrote my TEDx talk, and at first I wrote it just my mom's story. And I had a friend who had done a TEDx talk, so I asked him to review it. He's like, well, there's a great story, but what's the through line? The whole thing about TEDx is there has to be a through line. What is your idea we're spreading that other people can take and run with? And that's how I came up with my framework. I was like, okay, so I was looking at my mom, so I'm like, what is this? It's curiosity, it's creativity. I'm like, oh, this is a framework that they inadvertently use, right? They paused and paid attention to curiosity. They asked what if and how might we, and then they took small steps. And then in thinking about that, I'm like, this is how I've lived my whole life based on my mom's example. So that was the through line. I wrote it, and I'm not sure what anyone else's experience is, but knowing there's not going to be a teleprompter, I just tapped right back into my Catholic school days and memorized it word by word. Like literally for 6 weeks, like my family was eating frozen food. They didn't see me, but I was like memorize that thing. And then the day of, because I memorized it so much, like I literally could say it in my sleep, it felt natural. It felt like I had it memorized because I had memorized so well, right?
Yeah.
So that was my process. The other thing I want to tell people is that if you want to do a TEDx talk, just start applying, right? Just start applying for them. You'll get to the next step when you need to get to it. And then also what you see once it's edited and put on the TEDx platform on YouTube, it is not the way it goes down.
In what way?
Because what I'm trying to say is like, don't be so nervous, right? Because you can always re-record. There was one part of my talk where I talk about this organization that's really close to my heart. It's called the Honor Foundation. And they work with special force operators as they transition from military career to civilian career. And I am a facilitator there. and I mentioned their name and I said what they do. And I knew what I said, like, that's not quite what they do. So I just walked up to the cameraman afterwards and said, can I re-record that part?
Yeah.
And he said, yes. And that's what you see. That's what you see on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. And that's all still while you're there presenting in front of everybody?
Yes.
Or do they? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the same day.
Yeah.
And these are questions like you might want to ask beforehand, right? It's like, okay, if I make a mistake,
yeah,
do I have a chance to re-record? Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Well, and that's the thing too, where I think oftentimes that can hold us back from stepping into something, because you think about those what ifs, worst case scenario. What if I mess up here? What if I just totally blank?
Yeah.
And then what's going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, again, like my experience was, there were some people who completely blanked. But again, if you watch their TEDx talk, you don't see it at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's, I think it's human nature to catastrophize things and think like, what's the worst case scenario? So I think like this idea of thinking of possibilities, like what's the best case scenario?
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything in that process going through and preparing, for the talk and just afterwards that you learned about yourself that surprised you, or just something that was new just by going through that process?
I think I did really learn to advocate for myself in different ways. So even when they edited and brought and gave me the edited edition, what they edited, I'm like, I even asked them, I'm like, can I change it? Right? Can I do my own edit? And they said yes, because TEDx, like again, these are all volunteers, right? Everyone is this part of the production is I at least as far as I know are volunteers. So it's not like you're stepping on anyone's toes when you're not taking away someone's job by doing this. So there was this part of I'm like, okay, and that was a big thing for me, because I don't really ask for help. I don't really speak up for myself, or in the past I have not. So to be able to see something and be like, okay, this is going to be on the TEDx site. It's going to it's going to be seen by a lot of people. I really wanted to be a good reflection of the story, and especially, being able to make sure that I talked about the Honor Foundation in the correct way. So it took a lot for me to like, okay, should I ask? Because I usually wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think too, then it's like how then that next time, right? Like you were saying earlier, how that just builds the confidence. Like when you reached out to them initially and you put yourself out there, like, I'm going to do this, and not knowing if you were going to get a response and what that response is going to be.
Right.
And then how the next time it's just like, okay, well, you're going to keep shooting your shots in those ways. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's so many examples of what I've done since then, because again, it's like building that muscle of just taking chances. I have my dogs. I don't know if you can see him, but there's one right here. And I walked around the neighborhood. I live near Marina Del Rey, where there's a lot of businesses. So I walked past this business every day. I was like, that would be a really interesting client to have. So I just came home and went on LinkedIn and just started emailing people. I'm like, hey, I'll walk my dogs past your office. What do you guys do for leadership and team development? And a gentleman reached back out to me, and we have he had eventually like left the company. But we're like with Kevin Sakamoto. We're good friends, and we actually collaborate together now.
I love that.
Yeah,
you don't know. I mean,
right.
You really don't know.
Yeah,
and going back to your mother's story as well, it's like, who would have thought that? Like, what would evolve and what would come just in that moment of curiosity, and thinking about the whole aspect of just volunteerism and just showing up to do something. You have one goal in mind, and what if the goal is actually not the goal? That's something that my coach and I have like worked through different performance pressures and stuff. But like, what if the goal is actually not the goal, right? So what if something else could come from this? And that's what happens when we lean in.
Absolutely. I forgot who it was. Someone in my life, maybe it was one of my coaches, who's like, talks about like, you might have a goal, but then it really is about the process. And then in that process, you sort of think about this idea of like, here's my goal, but you can also say like, I'm doing this process to reach this or something better.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because what if that end goal that we're going after is just a limitation, you know? And then like we get so
true.
fixated on that result of it that we can miss all of the possibilities in the process.
Yes. I was thinking, I was telling my people, like, here's my revenue goal for the year, and it's pretty high for me. And someone was like, why only that much? I'm like, wow, that's interesting, right? Like to get another perspective, like, oh, like maybe I am limiting myself. I would have seen, it's like sometimes we can't see that we're limiting ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff. Okay, so I have a question. So our curiosities have the power to drive innovation. So what do you say to somebody who says that I'm not creative?
I tell them they are. Right? Like, so do you choose your outfit today? Right? Did you, did you choose your haircut? Right? So like the idea is that we're all innately creative. So I always tell people like we're all innately creative as human beings. That's just part of our humanity, and the way your creativity shows up is going to be different than someone else's. So you may not be artistically creative, but if you think about, even who was I talking? Someone who's this facilitator I know is saying like, "Well, I'm not creative." I'm like, "Did you not design that whole presentation that you just did, right? And put these ideas together?" So the work I do is in bringing creativity into the corporate world, into learning and development. And I talk about a lot about creativity in that sense is about being able to take ideas and put them together and create something new. And you can do that individually, and you can do that collectively. So and there's some hands-on tools I use too to share with people that they are creative.
Can you speak a little bit to that too, and just the different modalities that you use in that?
Sure. So when I first started my business, my business is called worksmart Advantage. I do team leadership development, keynote speaking, and it's all done through what I call creative integration, bringing creative tools to this. And when I first started my business, it was literally like it sounds silly now, but I'm like, I wonder if an office will let me come in on a Friday afternoon and just bring my arts and crafts supplies. And by the way, the answer was no. So I transitioned to be like, okay, I still want to do arts and crafts, but I'm going to connect it to learning and development goals. So we'll teach a leadership concept like turning your values into action or conflict management resolution. And throughout it, I'll use different creative tools. One of the tools I use is called Lego Serious Play. So Lego Serious Play is this methodology that was started the Lego group that allows people to think with their hands. You're literally building ideas. So you can, I have all my toys here. So like you can build ideas and you can share your ideas. And there's something about
That's good. I like that. Yeah.
There's something about asking people to share an idea and just asking them to speak versus saying build something and then share this, right? Because now you're outside of yourself and you're sharing a model of your idea, which once removes it from you. And if you're doing this in a group setting and you're trying to solve a challenge, let's say you and I were trying to solve a challenge and you're like, hey, but what do you think about this? And I give you an idea and you're like, well, what about we do this too on top of that? It might be, even subconsciously might be like, well, I like my idea. But there's something about being able to build with Lego and be like, okay, here's my idea. Ashley, what do you think? And for you to build on this makes sense, right? For you to build onto a Lego build makes sense. So yes. And so, yeah, like, it's Lego, but for someone to be able to build an idea out of Lego, that was creativity. The other, I mean, this I'll just show you one more. So I talked about the values cube. What I'll do is just bring these wood blocks, markers, stickers, and have people just decorate them, right? And some people just use words. Some people get a little more creative. But the idea is to get people to think with, bilaterally, right and left brain. So we're not just always in this analytical left brain thinking.
Yeah, it's getting yourself outside of the box. And I wonder how, I imagine doing that is new to so many, like in a way you could feel uncomfortable, right? You bring this in and you're like, what am I supposed to do with Legos? Or and it's maybe these limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves. How can that allow you to even break outside of yourself in ways, right? And discover new things about yourself and spark inspirations. And do you have any stories? I imagine you have a lot of, but people that you've worked with in ways that you've seen how that has sparked something new for them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every time I break out the Lego, right? There's
Yeah.
this spark of like, oh my gosh, like that's an idea that I hadn't thought about. I never thought about it that way. I've never seen it this way. But one story I'll share is through the Honor Foundation. So the Honor Foundation is, I said they are an organization across the country, but I work with the San Diego campus, and they work with special force operators as they transition from military, civilian careers. 3-month program called the Waypoint program. And I come in the very last night called Transition Night. And on transition night, we use all these creative tools to think about possibilities for the future. This idea that your military service informs what you do next, but doesn't dictate what you do next. So let's build a model that represents something you love to do as a child, right? And then let's look at that model and think about like, okay, what could you do with this now? And I had this one gentleman, his name was Ryan Anderson. He built a little model of a boat, and this was during COVID too. So he built a little model of a boat. And he lived near the water, so he had it on his patio. He took a picture of it, of this man on a boat and with the water behind him. And then 6 months later, he sent me a picture of himself. The job he got for his first transition was as a yacht broker in San Diego. Yeah, so it's just it's like these aha moments of like, to see as I use the special forces because it's Honor Foundation because it's such a shift from what they were doing to what they can be doing next. And we've had, I've had men that go like, oh yeah, like I was thinking about working for the Department of Defense, but I also love to customize sneakers. like maybe that's a career.
Yeah. And you don't know that that's possible until you step out and try.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What if, and what if you take, and the idea too is like, so you ask what if, you take a small step and then see what, like, don't even think about, like, don't think about 3 or 4 steps. Just think about like, take a small step and see what doors open up for you.
Yeah. I think there's that big fear. I know I've experienced this, right? What has held me back. And I've, in a lot of ways, stepped out of myself. And by doing that, by stepping out of my own comfort zones and trying something that's brand new, I mean, it has opened up my world to so much. And so I'm the biggest yes and amen to all of that. Yeah. But I think that the hesitation and things that have held me back in that past is that fear of the unknown. So how do you help to combat that?
It's human nature. So I've stopped beating myself up for that, right? I feel like there's a lot of, and I speak for myself. I also think I speak for a lot of people where, again, it took me 6 years to start my business. And during that time, there was a lot of like, why aren't I moving forward with this? What's wrong with me? Like all this self-blame. And then you realize, oh, there's science behind this. There's neuroscience behind this. It's human nature to fear change and to fear doing something different because it is the unknown. So I think, I mean, for me, that's like, it's just that process of I'm just going to take the smallest step possible. And I don't have to change everything in my life, but I'm just going to take a small step and see what happens next. I think that's like the easiest thing for me to say. I mean, we can talk about like different mindset exercises and things like that. Like the reframing exercise I really enjoy too. That's in the book as well. It's like, okay, so here's what I currently think. And by the way, it's negative, right? And how about I reframe that to a positive or something more empowering? Yeah. And then give myself some evidence. So for example, let's just say like the writing of the book. Again, a 4-year process of thinking, I don't know how to write a book. And guess what happened? Every time I told myself I don't know how to write a book, I didn't write a book. Right. And so when you can reframe that to, I don't know how to write a book, reframe it to, I haven't written a book, but I can figure out how. Right. Or I know people can help me, whatever that reframe is for you. So even in that change in sentencing or the change in wording of that, all of a sudden there's possibilities that lives in that reframe. And then the idea is to give yourself evidence that you can. Like, okay, well, I didn't know how to surf and I learned to surf. Whatever it might be, just give yourself one piece of evidence that you can do what you're saying you're going to do.
That's good. Yeah, connecting to that. It's so easy to fall into the, like when one negative thing comes up, it's like, oh, well, yeah, but you have, so much evidence of the other thing. Why don't we connect to that more and step in, and keep taking steps in that direction because it is there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's inspiring. There's something else that you've shared before, and that is to embrace what makes you different rather than
Mhm.
trying to fit in. So, why do you think that people get stuck here, and what has helped shift your mindset to see your uniqueness as a strength?
So this is like a really good, I mean, a really like special topic to me because again, I am a Vietnamese refugee. I I grew up in Santa Monica in the 70s. I grew up around like blonde surfers. and and all I want to do is fit in. I hear a lot of stories about this from people who had similar experiences as me, like, oh yeah, you want to be blonde and blue-eyed too? Right? And I think about like that's so crazy that I wanted to be someone else. But that lasted kind of a long time for me. Maybe not that specific, like be blonde hair and blue eye, but this idea like, okay, how do I fit in? How do I not stand out? How do I fit in? And literally like I think this really came to me in terms of the value of being different is when I started this business. Because up to that point, I had worked in the corporate environment. I had climbed the corporate ladder. I went into an organization like, okay, how's everyone else acting here? Let me act like that. And then when I broke free, I guess, and started my own business and really led with my strengths of curiosity and creativity and like bring into the corporate world rock painting. It's like oh like and all of a sudden like I felt successful, other people felt more successful, people were taking to this work. So I think it is maybe number one, recognizing what those characteristics are that make you different, and then again, like small steps, like what small step can you take to step into that? I look back now at my corporate experience, like, oh, well, what if, what if I had, brought my curiosity, my creativity into that environment? No one there said not to be. I just decided to fit in. Like, how much more, how much more could I have benefited? How could other people have benefited if I had always leaned into what makes me different than trying to be the same as everybody else?
It's really good.
Yeah. So I would say like, I mean, I say like, there is a tool. I sometimes use in my work. There's a website or an organization called Values and Action Character Strengths. It's viacharacter.org, I believe. And you can go in and take a free assessment of what your character strengths are. So take your top two or three and be like, okay, how might I apply a couple of these character strengths into my workday, whatever it might be.
I love that. I'm going to do that. Yeah. And just in that too, asking yourself those questions, obviously, what if is big, but how might I? What are some of those other questions that we can ask ourselves to start getting us to think about those other possibilities? Sometimes I can get in this like, oh, well, you try to fit into certain environments or certain places. I feel like I can get stuck there. What can I just bring out that's unique to me and let that be what I offer?
And lead with that. So, I mean, I think this is really, I mean, and maybe I don't want to generalize, but I feel like a lot of women have this issue, right? Or this challenge of how do I walk into a room and not absorb the energy in the room? And how do I walk in the room and really just like allow me to be myself, regardless of what else is happening in the room, right? Because oftentimes I will walk in a room and in the and like, oh, everyone's really like buttoned up and serious, so let me be that. Right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, like if everyone's like that, you should be who you are to change that energy in the room. So I think it's just that awareness. I really think, I mean, we can talk about this offline too, like this idea of like just recognizing. So how can I put this? Okay, so sometimes I still have that, like, what am I doing in this room? Do I deserve a seat at this table? And if I walk in with that anxiety and that energy, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to silence myself. I'm not going to use my voice. I'm going to let everyone intimidate me. So knowing what your character strengths are, I think is really important. So for me, and I actually and this is not the rock, but this is something I started doing in COVID was, if I had like a meeting, a big meeting or something, I have like my character strengths on these little rocks. I have them in front of me. I was like, okay, Is anxiety on the one of these rocks? No. Right? Is nervous? No. Nervousness is not on one of these rocks. But guess what's on this rock? Curiosity, creativity, positive energy. And literally like holding it in my hand as I walk in. So if you're doing like in-person meetings, it might be weird to walk in holding a rock, but just like knowing what your rocks are might be enough. But I do highly suggest physical rocks too.
That is so good. Wait, did you paint that? Is that a rainbow?
Yeah, yes. I did one at a workshop I did for one of my clients. So yeah, I'll bring like rocks, markers for people. I call these grounding rocks. Like, what can you ground into, to make sure that you're not allowing people to take your energy away from them? Because I feel like you're a well-intentioned human being, clearly, and we forget that as long as we like walk in a room and are ourselves with good intention, there's no like who's gonna miss it. I mean, even if people misinterpret that, you walked in there with your best foot forward.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm gonna get some rocks now, Juan, and start these affirmations. Right, I'll be walking around. That's really powerful. And just getting into that practice of reminding yourself of these things, because it's so easy to like, you hear one thing and it's like, and that just repeats and repeats and repeats. Mm-hmm. And this one thought that just keeps coming up. And yet everything else is over here is like, you have all this evidence everywhere else, but it's that one thought that you can just, hook into that can totally get you out of who it is you even are. And then you start questioning yourself.
Absolutely.
And then you have that self-doubt, and then that spirals, and it's just
we can spiral, can't we? I'm always very conscientious to make it very practical too, right? So don't walk in with like, okay, here are my 10 values, right? Pick one or two. Like if you're like, I'm going to just focus on the fact that I'm going to walk in this room and one of my values or one of my character traits is curiosity. And how might I show curiosity, right? So rather than maybe me making a bunch of statements, I might ask a couple questions first. And so come up with like what is that thing you're going to do, very practical thing you're going to do to lean into that curiosity or whatever that value is for you.
Vaughn, you're taking me to school now. I know that you have a workshop that's accessible to people online that they can be part of.
Oh, are you talking about Leadership Canvas, the cohort?
The one where you receive a box in the mail and you get all of this stuff that we're talking about, right?
Yeah. So, I'm always ideating and coming with new things. So I'll tell you the two I have available. So one is called Leadership Canvas Cohort. So Leadership Canvas is WorkSmart Advantage's signature leadership development program, where we go into corporations 4 to 6 times a year and we do these workshops that are all based on creative integration and facilitated by subject matter experts. So we'll go in there, we might teach like mentoring teams, conflict management resolution, influence without authority, whatever the topic is, but it's all done with our creative methodologies. Mine are these hands-on methodologies, but I might bring in a DJ, a spoken word artist. So we make it really fun. And what I realize is we're not reaching everyone that way. Not all companies can bring us in for a year-long contract. So I just developed with some of my business partners a program called Leadership Canvas Cohort, where people can access that online. So we're going to do a live online cohort. And yes, everyone will receive the creativity kit with all those fun tools in it. We just really make it, even though it's online, we really still want to make it, a WorkSmart program. And then the other one that I have that I haven't, I built it, I had one, and then it's like running a whole other business. I haven't been focused on it, but I want to focus more on it, is for individuals who want to learn how to follow their curiosity. So it's based off the book. It's called the What If Pigs Can Fly, Follow Your Curiosities Bootcamp. And it's just a 90-minute workshop where we kind of just go through the exercises in the book and come up with a small step for you to move forward with for that curiosity.
And where can we find all of that?
So worksmartadvantage.com is where you can find the Leadership Canvas cohort. And then whatifpigscanfly.com is where you can find more information on my book and my bootcamp. And thank you for letting me say that, because I would probably, like, someone the other day, I was on another podcast. He's like, so where else can we find out about you? And I thought, my website, my YouTube. He's like, if only there were a book. I was like, oh yes, there's a book.
Yes. And even with that, there's different downloadables, to go along with this book. And I know I'm excited to spend more time in here, and even going through some of these prompting questions are really good. I love the question asking. I think it's like with the questions that we ask, not just with ourselves, but one another, it's how we learn more, and how that just expands our capacity and getting into this space of possibility. So
Absolutely.
thanks again, Vaughn, for being here. I was super excited to have you come on. A little nervous.
You were, oh my gosh. Why would you be nervous? I think it's hilarious when people say that about me.
This podcast, honestly, I just wanted to share really quickly, because when I started it, it was like, I've always struggled with performance pressure. I'm a former athlete. I wanted to go play Division I basketball. I didn't see that dream realized in myself, but I watched all my friends go and play, and some are in the league and doing all these things. And one of my close friends is a top 10 tennis player in the world. Like, so you're seeing all your friends live out these dreams. And I always struggle with the performance side of like, oh, you failed because you didn't achieve this and all that kind of stuff. So I went through a lot of work internally with my coach and through all of this to like really break through some of these limiting beliefs in myself, and like, I'm not just the things that I couldn't achieve and all of that.
Absolutely.
And so when I started the podcast, I was like, can I step into a process where there's no outcome goals? We're just going to see where I'm just going to commit to showing up, and we'll see wherever it goes and how it goes. It's not tied to any metrics and numbers or anything. And it's just going to let it evolve and let it be. And it's been so fruitful in that way. I've been doing it for 3 years, and it's helped me just to like, I don't know, are you going to say yes when I ask you to come onto the podcast? I don't know, but I'm going to ask you.
Yes, absolutely.
I've been able to have these conversations and learn so much. And sometimes I get nervous, and I don't, this is not my natural thing to do, but it's stretching, and I've learned so much.
You're amazing. You're great. I love the fact that you're going through this process of, a friend of mine, Chris Eversley, works with a lot. He was a pro basketball player, but he went through that process of like, what happens after you're an athlete, right? It's like, it's such your identity, and it's so goal oriented. The only way you know to exist is by setting goals and reaching them. So how do you find another way to live? And it sounds like that's a process you're going through. And I love that you took the risk and and then the small steps to create this podcast so you can get access to other people and we get access to you. Well, I just thank you for the invitation. And just like you said, like you're like, oh, if I ask, are they going to say yes? On my side, remember, like, because I saw Nancy, we connected on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, I have a bunch of friends I could introduce you to be on your podcast. I didn't even think like, oh, how about advocating for myself and asking for myself?
Yeah, for sure. I know.
Well, what about you?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, hold on, Vaughn. You have this book on what if. Do you know 3 years ago, I'm taking notes on my phone about this? Like, please come join me on the podcast.
Yeah, I think you sent me the screenshot of it. I think that's great. I think you should go for it. Yep. Yeah.
A prompted journal that is, you flip the scripts, right? Where it's these, take the, the best case, what if the best case scenario out of all of these things happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So. And I guess I think the other side of it too is like, as you take these small steps, you'll have some wins and you'll have some what we call failures, right? But again, it's all part of the process. And another thing that I've heard along the way, listening to many podcasts, or maybe it was a coach somewhere along the line, so that things aren't just like as things happen, they try to think about like they're not happening to you, but they're happening for you.
That's so good. Like, someone I just talked to said that very same thing.
Yep.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you being here. I know you have South by Southwest coming up.
I do. Yes, I'm presenting my first workshop ever at South by Southwest on March 8th. I'm really excited about that. I'll be presenting the book, a little book reading, and the workshop around the book.
That's amazing. Amazing. Thanks, Vaughn.
Thank you.
My cheeks hurt. I said this when I talked to Nancy. I was like, my cheeks hurt from smiling
too much. You know what we should do? It'd be great to have an episode with Nancy and I on the call with you. That would be really fun. Well, you'll be able to come out to LA. We'll do it live.
You said it here.
Yep. What if?
Exactly. What if?